everyone. Good afternoon, I should say. We're going to start the presentation off with a very short poll. My name is Allison Hall, and I will be conducting the professional development workshop today on OER. Dr. Golden may be joining us a little bit later, Julie Golden, but I also have one of my colleagues, Dr. Summers, here with me, who may or may not chime in as we go through. But if anyone has any questions, this is a relatively informal session, so please, raise your hand or pop into the chat, or just post a question as you feel the need. So the first question that I want to pose today has to do with, of course, OER. The first question, and if I'm a little unclear, please let me know. Which of the following would you consider to be an open educational resource? You can choose one of any of the options available. And the way you're going to respond is just by typing the letter to 37606 after you follow the on-screen instructions that were presented before. Okay, so we got some people popping in. This is really cool, right? I've used this for like 5 or 7 years and it still is really amazing. So as you text in, you may or may not receive a response. If you don't be alarmed, but cool. As more people text in, you'll see the shift, the bouncing back and forth of the bars. So the answer choices that we have, A is a picture of Abraham Lincoln in a history course found on the internet, a syllabus for a full course found on the internet, a photo log of a family vacation, all of the above or none of the above. It seems like we're stratified between just 2 options. Okay, would anybody be willing to give a little feedback? I know by virtue of this kind of medium, it's anonymous, but would anybody be willing to say why they chose a picture of Abraham Lincoln? You don't have to identify yourself necessarily, but would you be willing to share why you chose a picture of Abraham Lincoln?
Hey, Allison, I'll share.
Yeah, thank you.
So I chose Abraham Lincoln, but I'm thinking that maybe I want to change my answer now. Only
oh, Dr. Bond, I know your voice so distinctly. Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. I chose Abraham Lincoln because initially I thought that maybe everybody would have access to it, but then thinking about the second half where it's in a history course may limit the openness of it. So I'm kind of on the fence now that maybe because it's in a history course, it may not be an OER. So that's kind of where I am at right now. So maybe the answer is none of the above.
Awesome. Anybody want to chime in on why they chose none of the above? You don't have to, it's totally your choice.
I did some. I think it's only government websites that you can take from freely. So that would be considered open educational resources.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to share? I have a comment on the chat, I think.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Lisa. Okay.
Okay, we're unmuted. You can go ahead. Allison, can you hear us?
I sure can, Mary.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I actually selected A, but I tend to agree E may be the most correct.
Okay.
As I don't think everything found on the internet would be OER.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else? Mary, who do you have with you today?
Oh, Larry Brown.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, awesome. The answer to this question, there's a bit of a caveat here, but it really depends on where you find it. But it could likely be D, all of the above, but it's very dependent on where you find that resource. And that's what we're going to discuss today, how to find resources that are open to everyone. It could either be E or D, depending on where you find it. So all of these things depend on where you locate the source. Snatching it off of Google, chances are it's not going to be an open resource, but we'll discuss this in just a few moments. Okay, so second question, and this is the last one that we're going to use this poll for. How do you define OER? So this is really just an open opportunity for you to text in using the same medium, text in your response. How do you define OER? You can also chat in, that's absolutely fine. Thank you. I got someone saying free to use resources. I think that's a very blanketed way of saying it, and it's kind of really all inclusive. So thank you to whoever that was. Cool. Resources available freely and approved for use, legal to use or copy. And I'd add another piece of that, or to remix, remake, kind of make your own. So that would absolutely be OER. Explicit permission is given to use the resource. Absolutely. Stable links, it depends on the definition. There are several definitions to OER. So stable links maybe to a journal could be considered if we think about the cost, but we'll talk about that in just a second. Resources that everyone can use. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. It seems like this is working pretty well today, so thank you for those who were able to chime in, and for those who weren't, that's completely fine too. Okay, so just again, my name is Allison Hall, and my direct supervisor is Julie Golden. I ran a lot of the information by her today, but she is equally a part of this presentation, although she's not present just yet. So welcome to everyone who's here. We're just going to be talking about OER and higher ed, and touch on a little bit of what OER looks like in K-12 with regard to financial resources, or at least the fiscal responsibilities that K-12 institutions have to kind of come to bear with. So the real kind of crux of today is what, why, and how. So hopefully we can help someone that way. And again, if you have any questions, just let me know. So in the typical self-fashion, we begin with objectives. And so by the end of the workshop, we should all be able to define OER. There are several different definitions, but we're going to use the perhaps more general one that was generated from UNESCO. Explain the utility of OER in the higher ed classroom. Identify resources that can help us in our search, and those resources include instructional designers here at the Center for E-Learning, or librarians at your institution. Absolutely, they're a part of that search as well. And then search for appropriate OER. So I have a few resources that you can use, and a full repository that's available offline if you guys are interested. So I'll be sure to leave my contact information after that. Okay, so OER has quite a few different definitions, and a lot of you touched on kind of the most general aspects of it. It's going to be classified as digital learning objects that are offered freely and openly for educators, students, and self-learners to use and reuse for teaching, learning, and for research. So that's going to be syllabi, photographs, videos, learning content. Full courses are offered online that started with MIT not too long ago, a few years ago. So open educational resources really are very vast, but it oftentimes depends on the license, which determines the way that you can use that particular resource. So sometimes through Creative Commons, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, through Creative Commons, you can completely remix the resource that you're choosing to use, or you could keep it the same, and it tells you whether or not you need to attribute, or if you need to change a little bit of it, which dictates the terms of use for that particular object or the repository of objects. OER can take numerous forms. There are definitions of OER that say free to use and low cost, which usually is under like $40 or less. I chose not to use that definition because in a general sense, most librarians who are kind of responsible for curating these resources tend to use the free to use definition. But if we're thinking about digital resources that are available through the library that don't cost the student anything, they cost the institution, but they don't cost the student money out of pocket, so to speak. Well, they end up paying for it, but it's not something that they recognize that they're paying for in a way. Those could be considered open educational resources, although they're not included in this very general definition. So if you're building a course that is going to be free to use, it's typically resources that are free to anyone. Students, educators, the institution, self-learners, etc. So OER begins as an affordability initiative. Its history, I'm going to pull it up in just a moment. I think I'll be able to share it on the screen. Can be tracked. Is everyone able to see this? I'm going to blow it up a bit. So I'm not going to go through all of the pieces of OER, but in January 1999, there's a university in Germany that publishes a video series of its lectures online. And this is considered by many people to be the first instance of open educational resources. We jump a little bit to MIT, which is really a groundbreaker in this field. MIT launches its OpenCourseWare program with 32 initial courses, and this was the most in-depth and complete collection of its time. So basically, it kind of was that beginning of that MOOC period in a way, where people can openly access course information. That's a syllabus, that is course content, that is tests, etc., all for free. And so this is an initiative that was began by MIT. So in January 2005, and I'm jumping around just a little bit, OECD's Center for Educational Research and Innovation launches a 20-month study on the scale and scope of OER, and that informs Apple's iTunes U, which provides the service of originally creating to organize and distribute educational audio, video, and PDF content. And as we see, it continues to go farther and farther, and I'll provide this link for anyone who's interested in having it, where we see TED launching an effort to bring top quality educational videos. And then April 2012, Course Hero curates free content from around the world. And we have institutions like the Gates Foundation that now offer scholarships for people to be able to create OER content and host and publish courses that are OER, that have adopted OER. One example is Broward College, which hosts several courses that have free textbooks, and they use OpenText. Many of their general education courses like psychology, sociology, geography, etc., are completely OER. They've completely adopted OER, where students access their textbooks via OpenText and don't have to pay for the resource. So this has been quite a while in the making, and is becoming more and more of an interest from the state level. Okay. So again, in the most robust form, it can comprise several different types of resources. Okay, so what is the use of OER? In a few of the studies that were done, I think, do you have a question? Yeah, absolutely. Lisa, we do have the link to share it, and I'll make sure to get that to you before the end of the workshop, or by the end of the workshop. Thank you for asking. So many of the studies have found that students, and I'm sure that many of you, if you're professors or work in any capacity that works with students, a lot of students won't purchase the textbook, and many of them have said that they haven't purchased a textbook because it was too expensive. I have a few figures in the next few slides. But faculty can't teach successfully in classroom environments, whether face-to-face or online, with increasing numbers of students who don't have access to the required reading and other learning materials. And we found this in quite a few face-to-face and online courses where students either wait till the middle of the semester. I've had instances in my own class where a student will say to me in the middle of the term, "Miss, I don't have the book." And so that is a real occurrence. It's a real instance, and we're finding that that's happening more and more. Just briefly to touch on K through 12, the spending on print and digital content constitutes about 3% of the budget for education. And that's K through 12. It's $17 billion annually spent on educational materials. That is quite a chunk of change. Moving to the higher ed landscape, a study conducted by the Student Public Interest Research Group calculates that over the past 20 years, textbook costs have increased at a rate of 4 times higher than the rate of inflation. And so we can see the cost of educational textbooks really skyrocketing, making it difficult for students to be able to afford these textbooks, which really impedes the learning process as students are not able to reference a textbook that they don't have. So textbook cost affects the average student in the country, so it's around $1,200 a year. and 65% said they decided against buying a textbook because it was too expensive. Half, or nearly half, said the cost of books had an impact on how many or which classes they took. And then 94% of the students who had skipped buying a required book said they were concerned that doing this would, of course, hurt their grade in the course. So as we can see, this is becoming perhaps a larger problem as students who, and really can become a form of marginalization for those students who really don't have the resources to purchase those textbooks. So OER can be really an effective way to kind of counteract the effects of students not buying these. Okay. So the use of OER has the potential to reduce costs for students and increase accessibility, but some critics express that there's a concern that some of the resources may dilute the value of the education. So just to pose a question, how many of you out there that are viewing the workshop have used open educational resources in some way in their course already? If you have, I'd be very happy to hear from you.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Somebody was talking to me.
Absolutely. How many of you, if any, and you can share your experience, have used any form of open educational resource in your course today? That could be an article that was, it could potentially be an article that was found online. It could be potentially be video resources like YouTube. Absolutely.
Right.
Things are found online as well.
I did absolutely, and it's fantastic because it's inexpensive. So, for example, especially teaching literature, there is a lot of material, really everything I need. Right now, I'm teaching a class of Italian culture and society, and I have not acquired because all the material, both video and read can be found on the internet. Or the only problem is that, of course, but this is my job as a teacher. I have to select the material very carefully because sometimes the information can not be correct.
Absolutely.
For example, but still, this is wonderful because they save so much and they get a good reading and easy writing.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Thank you for sharing.
Yes, I do. I use videos, I use even newspaper articles related to the courses I teach. You know, I'll put it in Canvas or put it on the overhead and share it with them. I don't know if the publishers' resources would be classified as OER, but I do have access with permission from, say, the CPA review programs. A number of them make their test banks and their study material available to me and to my students. So, you know, I'm using a lot more things out beside the textbook.
Absolutely. Professor Brown, what's your subject matter? What do you teach?
I teach accounting, cost accounting, and auditing.
Okay, excellent. To speak to the comment about publisher resources, typically they won't be considered OER if at any point the student has to, if any kind of exchange of funds to purchase the resource, like if they had to purchase the textbook in order to get a code to access the publisher information, etc. Those things are funded opportunities, so it wouldn't be considered an OER unless there was not a cost associated in general. But thank you for sharing.
The examples, I do not, there's no cost associated with what is made available to me and to my students.
That's pretty cool. Excellent.
A couple of questions that came in on the chat.
Okay.
Comments.
Okay, Dr. Toussaint, you had a comment?
Oh no, I was just saying that I used it once. It was a textbook. I forgot what the publisher or where it originated from, but it was totally free to the students, and they had the material available in PDF format.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
e-books are inexpensive.
Yes. Absolutely. And a few of the other definitions, or one of the second definition of OER, which is no or low cost, ebooks would probably fit right into that because they're typically a quarter of the price and offer the same level of flexibility, if not more. You had a
question.
Yeah, absolutely. Jupiter, Kathy?
Hi, so you're saying that anything that is public, maybe whether it's YouTube or things that are on the internet, that is classified as OER. I was thinking that it was some like OER library in a particular place, but okay, so is that correct? That if it's public, then it would be considered OER?
No, that is
No.
not correct. So that's a really good question. So although you may find something out on the internet, which is very much public, it could have the copyright, the owner of the copyright could not allow that to be used. And so just kind of taking things off the internet doesn't necessarily constitute it as OER. It depends on the license that's associated with it. So it's sometimes really difficult to track down who owns the license, who owns the right to be able to publish a certain thing. For example, and I tell the story often, there was a video for English language learners that I had acquired the permission from the publisher to post onto YouTube for students in a Blackboard course. And their lawyers emailed me to take it down after I'd acquired the permission to use it because they hadn't, I guess they hadn't spoken to the publisher and noticed that I was able to use it. So this happens all the time where people will put a video up, like a Disney movie, up onto YouTube and they don't have the rights. And then you kind of make the situation a little bit worse by going ahead and copying that link and putting it inside your course. That does not necessarily constitute an open educational resource, even though it's out in the public domain. If the copyright is murky, if it's not necessarily clear and sure, it wouldn't fall under this definition because it's not truly open. It was pirated.
But if it is like in Creative Commons, then that counts as OER.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Now the licensing makes a difference, and I'm glad you brought that up, Kathy, because I'm gonna show a little bit of Creative Commons and show you how to search. It shows you what the license is, how you can use it, how you can't use it, and what you need to do in order to be able to use this legally. So they'll tell you, you may use this, but you have to attribute it to me. You may use this and you can change whatever you want and you don't have to attribute it to anyone. You can just use it and pass it off as your own. So it depends on the license, and that's where it gets a little bit more intimate and intricate. But just taking things off the internet doesn't always mean that it is an open resource, even though it's open to the public. What we're trying to avoid is kind of being blamed for using something that we really should not have used. Julie?
And Dr. Vaughn and Lisa Martino both have the same question about the resources. Dr. Vaughn says we linked many articles to our FAU library. Is that open? And Lisa said, are the resources from the college library considered OER?
Good question. Based on the general definition that is free to use, they are not considered open. However, if we're using free or low cost, no or low cost, then yes, they are considered open. So in a course that is no cost to the student, that is an OER course. It depends on how it's being defined, and right now the definition is still a little murky. There is not one general definition. There are really two. It's free or low or no cost, and Broward College goes by the low or no cost kind of thing. But generally speaking, if it is no cost to the student, it can fall under OER based on the definition. And I can provide you a few articles that speak to the free and speak to the low or no cost kind of designation of OER. So in one instance, yes, it could, but if you were to use a separate definition, it really depends on how the institution defines OER. And right now, FAU is still in talks with the lawyers and the libraries to figure out a definition that we are comfortable with adopting, but we don't yet have one. So I use the general no cost, but in the next year or so, FAU could decide to adopt the low or no cost, in which case, Dr. Vaughn and Lisa, absolutely yes.
Lisa has another question.
Yeah.
Is that because there may be a fee for the library service through student tuition.
Exactly.
Fees.
That's exactly why. Because it really is like there's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody's paying for that, and it is typically the student who pays it in some kind of fee that's associated with their tuition. So although it is free, they have paid parking in a way. Anybody else? Those are really good questions. So another, based on the pie chart that I have available, so a faculty survey says that OER are the same quality or better. More faculty are saying that OER either are the same quality or better than publisher textbooks or than resources that have a fund or fiscal responsibility attached. And there are many different reasons for this, but typically it's because these resources that are available online are able to be updated kind of in an instance. And some of the resources can be curated. So where you have one textbook that maybe chapter 1 is really good, chapter 5 is really good, but you prefer 2, 3, and 4 speak to another aspect of the topic, you can find those things and curate them yourself and make it either better or the same quality as a textbook you could find online. So Emmanuel, your name is Emmanuel?
Yes.
Based on this data here, and anyone else can chime in as well, what do you think of the quality of OER resources that you've used? Would you consider them same, better, or worse?
Absolutely same quality.
Same quality as textbook. Anyone else? Same, better, or worse?
The one that I used, I would have considered it worse because in the math course, there were not as many exercises and opportunity for students to practice.
Absolutely.
But that could have, had they had that, it would have been just as good as a regular textbook.
Excellent. That's a very good point that Mario brings. There are a few pieces to OER that have to be kind of worked out and tweaked. Some of the trepidation that faculty have is the peer review component. If they're using journal articles, for example, that have been peer reviewed and vetted by experts in the field, if we're using open educational resources that are free, who's peer reviewing these resources? Because this is a process that usually takes time and money and effort and is kind of accreditable on a CV and stuff like that. So if these resources are free and this is kind of volunteer, who's reviewing these resources? There are, I don't want to say agencies, but more so nonprofit organizations that do offer peer review of textbooks that you can find online, but the peer review in these textbooks are less hardcore, so to speak. They're more like suggestions and comments. So if, for example, Mario wanted to adopt a mathematics textbook and it's been reviewed by 50 people, that's basically meaning that 50 mathematics instructors have made their comments on this text. It hasn't been tweaked or fixed, but it has been, I guess it's kind of a buyer beware. This is what to watch out for. If you want them to have a little bit more robust an explanation in this area, please make sure you provide it for them because this text doesn't do it for you. So that's one of the things to be mindful of when looking at OER. Another thing is that there are very few resources or OER agencies, OER organizations that offer a full library of publisher resources. So these things kind of are coming together as they're being built because OER is really an initiative based around affordability. So people kind of volunteer their time in a lot of ways in certain places to build these types of resources. There are a few, for example, OpenText offers publisher resources, but again, these are kind of being built as OpenText becomes more and more robust. So some things to think about as you decide on whether to adopt these types of things. If you're an instructor or a researcher that likes to use a large library of test bank questions, then you can work with an ID or with a librarian to help you find a textbook that's going to offer the same level of quality with regard to your questions as a publisher resource would, but it takes a little bit more time to find. We have a chat question?
Yeah, I would say that I would piggyback onto that you know, definitely when it comes to test questions and that kind of thing, but it's from conversations that we've had, it sounds like as the federal government is granting more and more grants, that things that are developed with that money need to become open resources because it's been paid for by taxpayers, if I understand it correctly. And so that, you know, government sourced studies and things like that, those are all accessible, and those would be pretty good to have. And plus literature, things that are older than a certain time, they're those are also open to folks too.
Two things you bring up, Kathy, that are really interesting. So government-funded grants, after a year, this is recent, after a year of having that research published, it now has to become an open resource. So after a year of having been published and the research is out, now it has to become an open resource. And so that they kind of heard your call, so to speak, and that now is a thing. Now with regard to literature older than a certain time, that is a little bit murky depending on who's holding the copyright, and that time is a pretty long time frame for it actually to fall into the public domain. I think it's life plus, what did he say? 70. Life plus 70. So it's a long time to wait for a resource. But again, things are kind of moving in that direction in a way. Thank you, Kathy, for saying that. So Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization that works to help share and explore knowledge and creativity to build a more equitable, accessible, and innovative world. I got that right off their website. So what Creative Commons does is basically provides a space, like Kathy mentioned earlier, or a repository or a library, so to speak, for you to access and publish your own work and provide a specific type of license or level of rights for how that can be used. If you go to their website, based on a few quick questions, they can help you develop the type of license that fits your needs. So if you want something that's attributable, if you want something that is free or open to use and it doesn't have to be attributable, you go to Creative Commons and they will help you to do that. I think I'm going to go ahead and try to share some Creative Commons stuff with you very quickly. All right. So I just typed into Google Creative Commons, and I'm going to click on CC Search. This is one place to find really a host of videos and images, music, web pages, media, not necessarily courseware, but you can find some things that can be used in your course. And anybody want to give me a term to search? I'll just type in
Set theory.
Set.
Yeah, set
S-E-T.
theory.
I don't think I'm going to find that one. Let's see. Okay. Does this have anything to do with what you're asking about?
I can see what's there.
I don't.
Oh yeah, these are Venn diagrams, yes.
So that's okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Go Creative Commons. Okay, so you click on the resource and it reminds you of a Google search. And on the right, if you guys can see this, is everybody able to see what I'm pointing at? Right over here. Okay, they tell you what the licensing looks like. So it's public domain, free for commercial use, no attribution required. So what does that mean to you as a user? Copy and paste. You can take it. It's yours. Let's see. Let me search for something else. Go back. Emmanuel, I'll search for literature.
Italian, be specific.
Italian. Be specific. Italian literature?
Italian.
Okay, Italian.
Let's see what happened.
Oh,
Of
of course.
Straight in.
I'm ready for lunch.
Okay, that's embarrassing. But okay, so anyways, I click on one of the pictures, and then we look at the licensing, and of course you could click Learn More. But basically, I'll go back. This kind of explains the licensing to you. But basically, it is free for the taking. It's yours to have, right?
Yes, please. Thank you very
for
much.
coming. Thank you so much for coming. So this is a pretty good repository for you to find certain things that you need, namely pictures. It's really good for media. Creative Commons is if you want to find pictures to put inside of your PowerPoint presentations or any kind of presentation that you're using, if you want to put pictures in your course, in your class, in your Canvas course, or whatever course you're teaching, these are good places to, Creative Commons is a wonderful place to find these pictures without having to worry about someone who owns the copyright noticing that you have a picture of theirs and saying, hey, what's going on? This wasn't a free resource. Okay. I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint. All right, so just a few other places, one other place in particular, since this is a short presentation, to locate OER is going to be OpenText, which is a textbook, I can't say company, but maybe an organization that houses textbooks. And so OpenText is really easy to search. One of the courses that I teach, a sociology course, uses an OpenText textbook, and it's a really good textbook, actually. And they do offer often publisher resources, OpenText being the publisher. So depending on your subject area, you can search, but I'm going to choose one of the textbooks that they have down here kind of for review. So for our mathematical people, I'll choose a statistics text, and you can search the textbook. It's like an ebook. It is an ebook, not like an ebook. But it shows you all the information here, the course objectives, and you start reading the book. So it's really, OpenText is a really good place to find OER, and you can also view the licensing inside of the textbook as well. But most things are open and free to use. You can download a copy of the textbook just in case something goes offline and you want to provide it for your students. But this is another opportunity for you to make a course that is OER using free to use and freely licensed courseware. Okay, as we wind down on the time here, I just want to, for those of you who do, who are kind of near us, I know this is a statewide professional development plan, but here is kind of a framework for how to build an OER course using the services that we offer here at the Center for E-Learning or the services that your librarian may offer at your institution. Many librarians, based on the statewide plan, we're trying to make, or the state wants to make major changes to the way that textbook affordability is kind of instituted at each different university. A lot of the affordability committees have kind of made the decision to make the textbook available earlier so students can plan on how to purchase it. But OER is becoming more and more a greater part of the agenda for statewide committees. And so at our center, we've kind of developed a plan. The first step, are you ready for OER? That's the first question to ask, and I'm kind of here on the left. If yes, explore what materials are in your course, and you can always consult an instructional designer, myself, Dr. Summers, Mario, anybody here at the center would be more than happy to help you. If you don't have an instructional designer at your disposal, your librarians are 9 times out of 10 the best resource for you to find open educational resources at your institution. Next question, is there an open textbook? If no, if yes, review the textbook for quality and appropriateness and go for it. You can adopt and make the necessary modifications if the license supports that type of thing. So just be mindful of the type of license that is presented for that particular text. If there is not, then you can think about curating your own OER. So are there suitable OER in the subject area? If so, create what's known as a mashup. So kind of like Emmanuel was saying, you combine videos, you can combine different lectures, you combine different courseware, and then you have your own OER course that you've built and kind of mashed up yourself. For all of these steps, you can also always consult one of the instructional designers or a librarian to help you with these. You can also use, after creating such a mashup, use the Canvas template to structure your course by modules, kind of to navigate the ease and flow of that course. And this all leads to a textbook cost, typically of $0 if we're using the very general definition, but it really just helps the student to be able to afford to take your class and not miss based on not having the textbook required for the course. Any questions I know that was quite a bit of information. I tried to be succinct and thorough, and I know I talked a little bit much, but do you guys have any questions at all? Nothing?
Can you summarize all of the resources? It's the Creative Commons, the
Yes. Creative
else?
Commons is your go-to.
It's one. Okay.
Okay. Now, there are so many different resources online, but there is one resource called Merlot, M-E-R-L-O-T.
Right. I've seen that.
Okay, that's another one that's really good. But there are so many different resources online that offer so many different levels of open. I chose to kind of winnow down to the two that I knew that were very vast and that would provide you a great search. But I do have a little repository that I've been building that could probably answer your question a little bit better. It kind of, every week I add another resource to it and it details it just a little bit better. So that question is a short question with a long answer.
So you'll send that out with the link for this video.
I'm happy to share that with you.
Thank you so much.
It'll be updated every week. That's one of my tasks here at the center, to kind of curate a repository for our faculty here and of course for our neighbors statewide.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for attending. I hope that this was very helpful for you guys. So thank you so much.